What is up, everybody out there listening today? You are now tuned into the Fantastic 4+1 show with summer of opportunity interns Tim, Elvin, Howard, Tyron, and yours truly, Tony T.J. Hinton. Yo, today is Tuesday, August 13th, and today we got a little show for you today with interviewee Patti Singer. You know, we got a little debate about violence in video games and its effect on today's society. We got some Vox Pops interviews, you know, plus local news and activities, programs for children and stuff. We're going to jump right into that today. Remember, you listening to WXIR 100.9 FM radio, your extreme and independent radio service. Yo, for our first segment today, we're going to top it off with Tyron Hill and Today's in History.
What's up, everybody? My name is Tyron, and I got some famous birthdays today. First birthday I got is DeMarcus Cousins. He turns 29 today. He's a professional basketball player in the NBA, and he plays on the Lakers. And I got some singers born on August 13th. Which the first one is Kathleen Battle. She turned 71. For younger people who's listening, she was an opera singer. And I got singer James Dupre. He turns 35 for all country lovers. And I got some movies that came out today in history. The first movie I got is Bonnie and Clyde, which came out in August 13th, 1967. And I got South Park, which premiered on live national TV in 1997 on August 13th. In local history, the First Court Street reunion took place this week in 1996. It was started to celebrate the neighborhood and the community. The 24th annual reunion is this Saturday. Bring your walking shoes because it will have great entertainment and amazing food. Come out this Saturday to celebrate. That was the history segment, and thank you, everybody. Tyron out.
Yo, that was Tyron Hill with Today in History segment. We finna jump into local news and weather with Elvin. Elvin, take it away.
Alright, thank you for the intro. Anyways, today we're here to talk about Rochester's local news. It turns out that Verizon is suing Rochester for attempting to regulate 5G rollout. Verizon says the city is charging unfair fees to put up tower nodes. This story was just released yesterday, and the city officials responded saying, and I quote, "The city of Rochester is dedicated to ensuring its infrastructure is protected and maintained to be benefit taxpayers. Other communities providers are complying with the law while building out their networks and paying the necessary fees. These fees are comparable to what our cities required. The city is confident in our position against the frivolous lawsuit." Also, in other news, wearing African American hairstyle is now protected by the law in New York, meaning that if you wear natural or braids, you try to get a job, managers can't decline you because of your hair. That also applies for public schools where you can't be disciplined for your hairstyle. Now into the weather. It's 80 degrees today with a 61% chance of rain. Also, tomorrow is going to be 75 degrees with a 5% chance of rain. On Thursday and Friday is going to be mostly cloudy with highs in the 70s. Saturdays and Sundays is going to be sunny with a low chance of rain. Also, this is Elvin with the news and weather segment. Peace.
Yo, you're back with Tony T.J. Hinton, and we finna get into this interview with our guest today, Miss Patti Singer. For you guys who don't know, Miss Patti Singer is a multimedia journalist who's written for the Democratic Chronicle, Minority Reporter, and other local news outlets. Miss Patti, how you doing today? You want to introduce yourself?
I am doing well, and I appreciate being here.
Of course. So we're gonna jump right into the interview and just ask you a couple questions. What is a multimedia journalist for those people who don't know?
Okay, multimedia journalist is someone who uses video as well as the printed word. So in the last few years when I was at the Democrat Chronicle, there was a big push on having the reporters learn how to use video skills. We used iPhones. Reporters, the photographers use, fancy cameras and things like that, but the reporters, such as myself, we had iPhones and we learned how to shoot video and we learned how to edit video. And so that made me multimedia journalist because now I'm able to not only write, but I can put video with my stories.
Innovation at its best, right?
It is. It is a good thing.
So how long have you been doing journalism?
I have been doing journalism in one form or another since I was 16 years old.
16. Wow.
16, and that is very many decades ago.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that right now.
Well, for a very long time.
Yeah. How'd you get into journalism? Who started out for you?
I always wanted to be in journalism. So when I was a kid, which was before Title IX, which you know Title IX as mostly for equality in sports, though it's in all education, but it's been famous for giving males and females equality, equal opportunity in sports. Before then, there was not an opportunity for girls or females to play sports much at all, and so when I was a kid, I wanted to be around sports. I figured I'd be a sports writer. That would keep me around sports. So I did that for about 15 years, and then I moved into news.
And, was it your first job? Was that you started young at 16. Was that your first job?
My first job was for my hometown newspaper. I covered the high school sports and the summer American Legion baseball teams.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. It was great.
Kind of set your career path for you?
It did.
Have you done any journalism outside of Rochester?
I did, yes. I'm not from Rochester. I'm from Rhode Island. So my hometown was in Rhode Island. That was the paper there. And I went to school in Boston. And I worked for some newspapers in the greater Boston area. And then I moved after graduation to Maine. And then I moved to Pennsylvania. And then I came to Rochester.
So you came to Rochester when you were 16 years old?
No. That was my third job out of college. My hometown paper I started. I was 16.
Which one you like better, your hometown or Rochester?
I'll take the Fifth Amendment. No. I've lived here longer than I lived in my hometown. Put it that way.
All right. So, what's the biggest story you said you covered?
Well, that's a hard one because they're all big in their own way.
Right.
Probably I've done a lot with opioids in my last couple of years at Democrat Chronicle, and those were big stories. Definitely affected families. I did a story with the help of an editor at the Democrat Chronicle, help of an editor and a colleague at the Democrat Chronicle a couple of years ago that resulted in closing a nursing home. So that would be a pretty big story because there was an awful lot of unintended consequences from that because those residents had to be moved to a different facilities. So that was a pretty big story. Rochester hasn't had a nursing home closed in a very long time, and the story that we did there, a lot of people in the community said that led to the closure of the nursing home. So that was a pretty big story.
See, I don't have, a lot of office and work experience and stuff like that. How would you say, going to the office for journalism, how's that atmosphere when you're there with a whole bunch of other journalists and people like that?
It's great because journalists are really smart people and they have a lot of ideas and they like to share their ideas with their colleagues and with the public. That's why we go into the field that we go into. So there's always fascinating conversation. It's always something to talk about, always opinions being shared. All the newsrooms I've worked in have been very helpful. Everyone's been very helpful. So if you're stuck on a story, there's always people there to help you, to offer advice. The best newsrooms are a team. Everybody works as a team together to get that product out every single day.
So you guys tell me that you work hard and stuff like that, but you also play hard. You're telling me beforehand that you started a baseball game when you were working with Democrat and Chronicle.
Wiffle ball. We play wiffle ball. We play wiffle ball on Parcel 5. Yeah. My colleagues enabled my little wiffle ball addiction. So we got a bunch of people every Tuesday. A bunch of my colleagues would come out and play, and we got other businesses in the area to come out and play. So for 3 years we played, we had games scheduled almost every Tuesday. Of course the weather always doesn't cooperate.
Right.
Sometimes they have these things called festivals on Parcel 5, and the Fringe Festival and Jazz Festival came and played on my lawn. It's very upsetting to me. But I have to share. I'm a good sharer. I shared my lawn with these other events in town. And so now that I'm not there, one of the people that we played, Grace Road Church, has taken it over. So they arrange all the wiffle ball that's played on Parcel 5. So anybody goes by Parcel 5 on a Monday around lunchtime, sees a wiffle ball game, that's Grace Road Church is taking care of that. And if you want to play, contact them and they'll probably get you into their schedule.
That's good. You started something that continued to live on.
I did, yes.
All right, so when you go about finding a story, how do you do that? Do you, is it always selected from your boss? Do you go something that's your own personal interest? How do you go about finding stories that you like to cover?
It is both. And once people know that you want to write their stories, they will bring you their stories. So it's knowing the community, knowing what's happening in the community. There's a whole industry set up, the public relations industry and marketing industry. This whole industry is set up to bring stories to reporters such as myself, and then it's my job to determine whether that story is really worth telling. It's worth my resources on it. Someone's paid to bring me a story idea, but if I choose to do that story, it's up to me to do it in the best way that I think is going to help my readership. And that's sometimes where we go in different directions from media relations people. And then it's just being part of the community. I have some good colleagues who are very connected to the community, and they will suggest some story ideas to me, and I'll run some story ideas past them. So again, the best newsrooms are always a good team.
And how often are you able to go off and, kind of do your own type of journalism, stuff that you want to do, stuff like that? How often are you able to do that with your job?
As long as you do the stories that the bosses want, then you can do the stories that you want to do. It's a balance. So sometimes your editors will come up and say, we need this story to be done, and you say, well, I'd really like to do a story on this topic over here. Well, do this one, then you can do that one. So it's making sure that all the audiences get news that they need to get.
Of course,
so you can do the ones that you want to do.
Yeah. And what's your favorite topic to cover if you're doing journalism? Somebody give you a topic that you can freely go do. What's your favorite topic to cover?
My favorite, I don't know if it's a topic so much, but it's how to approach the story. I like to write about what people are doing or what's happening to people. So when I did a lot of stories about the opioid crisis, I tried to write stories about what was happening to people, what was happening to families, what was happening to individuals. When I write stories about community events, I always try to find what's happening to the person. And like, you folks were telling me before, you've got your project with Clarissa Street. You can write about, there's this event called the Reunion, but it's more interesting to you, right, when you went and talked to the people who were there and got the people stories.
Their point of view.
Right, and the event is there, but it's the people that make that event happen.
Right.
So it's always trying to remember it's people who do things, not just things happening.
Well, with your way of approaching people and getting, what happens to them and their side of you, do you ever get any emotional, sentimental value, stuff like that? Emotionally attached to the stories that are going on here. And I know the opioid crisis, like you said, was a pretty big deal, stuff like that. Do you ever get any emotional contact?
I wrote a story. It was my idea to do the story, and my editor supported it. That several years ago I was noticing in the Democrat Chronicle that people were saying that they lost a loved one to addiction, and the obituaries and the death notices, they were writing that. And so I thought that was really interesting, is why people were doing that. And so I had 4 families that let me into their lives to talk about why they were doing that, why they put their loved one died from addiction into the obituary, and that was a very difficult story to do, and there were a lot of tears on both sides in that story, mine as well as the families, as they were talking about their children.
I imagine that's a very rough topic to try to go into. So how do you feel about the transition from print media, the type of journalism you do now? I know that it's a lot changed over the past couple of years, over decades and stuff, over newspapers being printed out and stuff like that, and mostly being on the internet and technology based. How you feel about that?
Well, it's always the reporter that gets the story. So your colleague was reading the news headlines a little while ago. Where does that come from? That comes from a reporter getting the information and sharing it with the public. So it used to be, it would just be printed on a piece of paper that somebody would stand on the corner and yell, today's news, right? Then we had radio. And then so people were reading, like we're doing today. People were reading the news. And then we had television, and people were sitting in front of a camera and sharing the news. And now we have the internet, where people are just going www. whatever or going to Facebook. So, but it's still the news, and it still needs to be factual. It still needs to be truthful, and you still need trained reporters who are able to bring that to people. So the form that it is distributed in may change, but the basic principles of journalism shouldn't ever change.
Right. Same content, different delivery.
Correct.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we got to wrap this up. I got one more question I'd like to ask you, though. You got any advice for anybody that wants to pursue journalism as a career?
Yes, I do. is to definitely demand everything from your teachers, that they teach you and that they demand excellence from you. Learn the subjects you don't want to learn. Learn about economics and learn about taxes and learn about math and learn about science and learn as much as you can. Read as much as you can and talk to people as much as you can and have as many good experiences in all those areas that you can, because that will come back to help you when you go into journalism.
Well, thanks again for saying of us, Miss Patti Singer. You've been a great interviewee. Anything you want to say to everybody listening and sign off type thing?
I just appreciate being here. I appreciate you and your colleagues doing this, and I think it's great. And I think just you guys got good futures for you. Just stay with what you're doing, and we'll be hearing about you.
Of course, thank you. Well, everybody out there listening, this is the Fantastic 4+1 show. That was Patti Singer. We're multimedia journalists. I'm Tony TJ Hitton. We're finna take a quick little break. Make sure you stay tuned in. We'll be right back.
This weekend is the 24th annual Clarissa Street Reunion. It will be the first ever youth stage hosted by Teen Empowerment. That stage will have amazing activities like Zumba lessons and poetry. The party starts at noon and goes until 8 p.m. this Saturday. You can check that out in the parking lot of Mount Olivet Baptist Church. Come celebrate. A new youth mission. It's time to listen.
Teach your brothers, your sisters to raise each other up and watch how times corrupt and show the elders that us teens is just that thing.
For all upcoming student athletes, there are some things that you should know about sports.
Studies have shown that over 50% of student athletes play with an injury.
But there are ways to protect yourself and be safe from sports-related injuries.
If something doesn't feel right or you're in any type of pain, let your doctor know. Also, let parents or coaches know about your injuries.
Staying in shape, working out, and eating healthy can and will stop future injuries from happening.
This message is brought to you by RCTV and WXIR.
Welcome back here to the Fantastic 4+1 radio show on WXIR 100.9 FM radio. Yo, for our next segment, we're going to look at an issue of violence in video games. On August 5th, Donald Trump blamed violent video games for the mass shootings that took place in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio 2 weeks ago. This here is what he had to say on that matter.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Cultural change is hard, but each of us can choose to build a culture that celebrates the inherent worth and dignity of every human life. That's what we have to do.
That was Donald Trump on his, opinion on the shootings and, why they happened and how violent video games play a matter to them. We, in part of the crew, went around the station and kind of get other people's opinions with some Vox Pop interviews. We're going to let y'all hear them real quick.
Hi, my name is Howard. You know how Donald Trump was talking about how he think video games causes mass shootings? What do you think about that statement?
Vandell Marshall. I think that's not true. There's so much that's going on in the world that we can't pinpoint what is causing it. Video games, violent movies, it's part of our society, it's part of our world. Most people just have it in them. It's in their DNA. So to blame it on video games, if that's the case, we can blame his rhetoric. It's part of it, pushing people to hate different races.
Rashida Birch Washington. I think that is just an excuse to deflect the attention from his behavior and his rhetoric. Obviously, video games have been around for a very, very long time. There are lots of different kinds of video games. I mean, I don't know when Frogger doesn't cause people to mow people down in the street, Really what causes mass shootings is hate and lack of common sense laws that keep war weapons out of the hands of those who are the most likely to commit such crimes?
John Watson. I mean, sure, there's violence in video games, but there's violence pretty much everywhere through the media landscape. So, I mean, I grew up playing Grand Theft Auto. That was like one of my favorite games to play, and still is. But I'm not going to go out and run a crowd of people down in my car. I think that's a whole different. Those people have their own complex set of issues, and I think video games are an easy scapegoat for, specifically, I guess, the president right now. But I've always thought that argument was pretty ridiculous.
Rick Osborne. I don't think video games cause mass shootings, because me personally, like, I play video games from time to time. I play Call of Duty, but I'm not going out trying to shoot everyone on the street. I do have to admit, when I was playing Grand Theft Auto, you know how sometimes with someone's car, like, you could just jump in their car? And sometimes I'm driving my car down the street and I can see like a car door opening, and in my mind I'm imagining myself jumping in the car and taking it. You know what I mean? But as far as mass shootings, I really disagree with that. I think that most of the people that are committing mass shootings, I think it's really like a mental issue.
Miles. I think it is evident that violence has existed long before video games, and violence will exist long after they fall out of fashion. And the sheer fact is that if people have access to weapons, they will use those weapons.
Where do you think the mass shootings came from?
I believe that mentally unstable people have access to weapons that no human should have access to, and that gives them an unprecedented degree of power over other people's lives.
That was Howard and Vox Pop interviews from around the station on people's opinions and ideas on violence in video games. Following that up, we got Elvin here, who's gonna, kind of moderate this little debate we're gonna have about violence in video games. So Elvin, take it away.
Alright, to talk more about this, I'm joined by TJ, Tim, Howard, and Tyron. And I want to get your responses to this argument that violent video games contribute to a violent society. Let's start with TJ. Can you give us your opinion about that?
Well, in my opinion, for a fact, last year there were a total of 340 mass shootings in the United States. This year alone, there's been 22 school shootings. And, as you know, 2 weeks ago in El Paso, 22 people were gunned down. And hours later in Dayton, Ohio, another 9 people were killed. I think maybe, President Trump might say video games or, think of violence as an easy, escape to, maybe pinpoint the real type of, how would you say, problem that deals with these people. Leading, psychological studies have shown that, violent video games may lead to aggressive behavior, but, there's no real findings that violent video games lead to mass shootings and, how they're being seen right now. Tons of other places have violent video games, Canada, Europe, Brazil, Australia, etc. They all have these violent video games, but none of them have the mass shootings that come with them, like the United States does. Nobody really, you can't really comprehend that type of stuff and just put it on video games is like the lone thing that makes mass shootings happen.
Yeah. Alright, thank you for that. Tim, can you give us your opinion about that?
I think the video games aren't the cause of school shootings. For some games may give them the idea, but for most shooters it has something to do with outside sources like family issues, bullying constantly, or mental illness. Alfred University did a poll on what people believe are the cause of school shootings. 87% say it's because they wanted to get people back who may have wronged them in the past, and only 37% said it's due to video games.
Oh, shoot. Thank you. Howard, can you give us your opinion about that?
I don't think that video games cause mass shootings, because there has been mass shootings before, and the cause of these mass shootings is because these psychopaths have these guns and they have power over others' lives. I play video games called Call of Duty, GTA, and Fortnite, but it doesn't make me want to go take innocent people's lives. And I think Donald Trump's statement is just nonsense.
Alright, Tyron, how about you?
In my opinion, video games are not the cause of violence in America, because they're kids from the age of like 5 to 21. And even older people are starting to play video games more often, like Fortnite and stuff, games like that. And also, like, games are where people socialize more, make friends, and go on the internet. And there's a study that shows people who play video games usually make more friends on the internet than in real life.
Alright, TJ, you mentioned that psychologists found that playing video games can lead to more aggressive behavior in children. So isn't that true? They can have some effect on people's behavior?
Well, I mean, that aspect, I guess you can say is some truth to that, but at the same time, you got to realize that aggressive behavior does not lead to mass shootings. You know, aggressive behavior leads to aggression, and there's many forms of different aggression. You know, I mean, I play video games, violent video games, and I'm not no really aggressive type person. You don't want to see me going out and shooting people. I think that is really, some type of mental issue that, probably needs to be researched and maybe pinpointed to kind of figure out what's going on, because, just borderline aggression from violent video games doesn't make you want to go and kill 1,000 people for fun,
I mean, for me, it depends on, like, the type of video games that people play. Like, when kids, like, play Fortnite, let's say, and they get so angry that you just break, like, they just break everything around the room, like, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, and to me, in my opinion, that's more of like childish behavior. I mean, that's not, you're not mature yet. When you're a child, you get mad. Your first thing might be to have a temper tantrum, and to me, that's the aggression that they should be having. So, I don't think that I don't think that can be counted as pure aggressive behavior. That's just immaturity, teenagers and stuff.
All right, thank you for that debate. This was Elvin with the debate and violence video game section, and I'll see y'all next time.
That was our summer opportunity interns and our take in violent video games. And for our last segment, we're going to get to Tim with these activities and youth programs for children.
We have a few youth programs to tell you about that can keep you occupied outside of school. Martial Arts America, Rochester's karate school with 30 years of experience. They provide classes and programs from ages 4 to adult for focus, respect, self-control, and fun. And it's located at 3450 Winton Place. The Hochstein School on North Plymouth Avenue provides excellent music and dance instruction to anyone who's interested, regardless of age, level of skill, background, or ability to pay, with year-round classes and summer camps in music and dance. In Control is a youth development and teen pregnancy prevention program led by Planned Parenthood of Central and Western New York. In Control components include evidence-based sexuality education, youth-led music, drama, and video production and recreation. You can learn more about this program and many others at metrocouncilrochester.org. This is Tim, and those are some of your youth programming options.
That was my man Tim with some year-round programs and activities you can get your child into after school and all of that. Oh, that does it for our show today. Your producers today were Tim, Tyren, Elvin Howard, and yours truly, Tony, TJ Hitton. Special shout out to our engineers and supervisor for today, Mr. Darian and Mr. John. Both help with the, behind the scenes broadcasting and video. Special thanks to our guest, Patti Singer. She was a great interviewee. Came to sit with us for a little bit. I'm your host, Tony TJ Hinton. This has been the Fantastic Plus One show. Thank you for listening. You have now been tuned in to WXIR 100.9 FM radio, only here in Rochester, New York.